I'm not going to get into it, but yeah. So he left the project, and one of the reasons why it's pretty much kind of confirmed that he was definitely involved at one point was there was later a re-release of Sonic 3 for the PC called the Sonic 3 Collection, which combined Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles into one package.
Yep.
And there was a number of distinct tracks that had a Michael Jackson influence in them that were replaced with other music. And there's also the Sonic 3 ending theme. Not Sonic 3 and Knuckles, just if you're playing Sonic 3 alone.
Yep.
The ending theme is literally Strangers in Moscow. Like it's note for note, literally Strangers in Moscow. It's so hilarious. And Carnival Night is pretty much Michael Jackson's jam. So there's definitely like some connections there. Hey guys, I'm Bill, also known as the Barbecue Games on Instagram.
And I'm Alex, his sister, who brings only chaos.
And together we are the Gaming and Collecting Podcast, a mostly video game centered podcast.
But half the time, we just talk about anime.
And that collecting thing, well, that's mostly just an implication at best.
So come along and enjoy us on this adventure
as we discuss the games that shaped us. So, how you been?
I've been good. This week was pretty good. It was so nice out today. It was like 40s.
Yeah.
I've been playing basketball at work.
The 40s? It was like 70s.
I mean 70s, yeah.
I was going to say 40s. That's not nice.
I don't know. My brain is broken.
It's alright. It's going back to like the 50s tomorrow. It's going to rain.
It's going to rain.
So.
It's going to pour rain.
Gonna be sucky.
Yeah.
Because New England weather makes no sense and it never will.
Nope, it never will.
But you were playing basketball, you were saying?
Yeah, I've been playing basketball at my job. Like, we play at lunchtime. And I didn't realize how much running there was in basketball. But I think it's because, like, whenever I played basketball, like, in high school and middle school, I just didn't try. But now I'm actually trying.
See, I always knew there was a lot of running in basketball. No one would ever pass me the ball, so I would always, it would basically just be me running back and forth the entire game.
Yeah. See, like, the
granted, I can't catch for shit, so.
The group of people I play with, like, we try and make sure that, like, everyone gets the ball at some point, so, yeah. So, it's good. It's fun. It's fun, but my legs are so sore that today I took a day off because I'm just in pain.
Pain and misery.
Pain and suffering.
Yeah.
But how are you doing this week? Anything interesting happen, or?
No. I'm still getting by, I guess you could say.
Well, just gotta keep on keeping on.
Yeah, I'm getting close to the end, so.
But yeah, other than that,
it's. Well, I haven't really been watching anything because I've literally gotten home and fallen asleep or done other things this week because I'm just exhausted lately.
Yeah. No. I've been watching a little bit of One Piece, a little bit. Whenever I do like a workout at home, I've been watching the One Piece episodes, like from the Wano arc. So I'm like forcing myself not to continue watching it so I can like space it out because I believe I only have 18 more episodes and then I'm caught up, and I'm real sad about it.
Yep. No, I'm just trying to get through all the. I'm actually working on a new set for blog photos for the blog right now.
Nice. That'd be neat.
But other than that, I've been playing a lot of I've been playing the Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga remake too. Just replaying it.
Nice.
Because it's a good game. And other than that, I do have a collecting update, I guess.
Oh, nice.
So I got some stuff in the mail, and then I went to the wonderful wonderful world of GameStop, which is about 75% a toy store now and about 25% game store.
Sounds about right to me.
But I did pick up, so I finally got Elden Ring, because no one will shut up about it.
I've seen so many, like, posts on, like, Twitter about that, and I'm just like, huh.
Yeah, well, no one will shut up about it, and it looks interesting, so I grabbed it.
So you caved.
Also, it's a new PS5 game. I tweeted about it. I basically was like, so can I join the cool kids club now?
You already were in the cool kids club, Bill.
And now, okay, and then the other two games I got at GameStop were, I got Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth, the complete collection.
Nice.
Because it was on sale, and I like RPGs.
Nice.
And then I got Danganronpa Decadence, which is a collection of all three Danganronpa games, along with a spin-off board game thing.
Huh.
On one convenient cartridge.
No, that's nice. Convenient.
So I now own like 4 versions of every Danganronpa now. And then for stuff I got in the mail, I got Jimmy Johnson's Anything with an Engine.
Oh, nice.
I didn't realize this game existed, but now I do.
Well, now you know.
It's probably crap, but I'll enjoy it anyways.
Hey, you don't know until you try.
I got it just to fill out the NASCAR collection, and then the most interesting thing I got was I imported a copy of Metal Gear Solid Integral, which was it was similar to like Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance and Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence. It was essentially the updated re-release of the original Metal Gear Solid. Only what makes this one interesting though is a lot of the additions they added to this version of the game were actually things that they included for the US release. So in reality there was no real reason to release this overseas. But it also came with a bonus third disc of bonus VR missions, which later became its own standalone game overseas.
Huh. That's funny.
So, but I got the Japanese copy over just to have.
Yeah.
But other than that, that's been my collecting updates. Are you drinking anything this fine podcast?
I am. I'm drinking a Dell's Rhode Island hard tea.
You like those?
I do. I enjoy them.
So I'm drinking a Smirnoff Seltzer limited edition red, white, and berry.
Nice.
0 sugar, 90 calories. That's pretty much.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad at all.
Below 100. That's really all that matters.
Yep.
But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much all that's been going on.
Yeah, it's kind of just been like, well, I've been busy at work. Like, work hasn't been bad or anything. It's just been like I felt like this week went by very fast.
Must have been nice.
I'm sorry.
This week dragged. I basically got paid to fuck around on my phone all day. For an entire week.
I mean, like, at least, like, you're getting paid for it,
I know. It's just, I'd rather be doing something, but...
Yeah. No, I get that.
I can only browse Instagram and Twitter for so long before I start losing my mind.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we do have a topic for this episode.
We do?
Yeah, you know that we do. We don't just bullshit the entire time.
What? No, shit.
But so in the past we've done an episode on music before in the past.
Yep.
We've also done concert memories. Well,
Yep.
We're kind of doing that again this time. Only this time we're going to actually be keeping it within the video game world, and we're going to be talking about video game music.
Woo!
Now, video game music is one of those really interesting things because it's like there's a weird like bias against it where some people don't consider it actual like music or like a real art. Which is bullshit because it clearly is.
Yeah, like
the amount of work that goes into composing an entire soundtrack. Like, it's the same as, like, a movie soundtrack or, like, any sort of, like, musical endeavor.
No, most definitely.
And people have started to kind of come around to it, although you will still get the people who just claim, oh, it's video game music is just a bunch of bleeps and bloops and doesn't actually have any structure.
Well, they're the people who don't actually play video games.
Exactly, and they still think everything's an Atari.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about the amount of people who think that still, that video games are just so basic, and it's like, no, they're like very in depth now. Like, like, you are incorrect, sir.
Yep, but people are finally starting to come around to the reality of it. So, one of my favorite, besides video games, like one of my favorite like mediums of all time is music. Just because music is such a multifaceted, like it's like a multifaceted, just kind of like
anyone
element.
can, yeah. Like, I feel like music, especially, is something that like everyone enjoys. Like, I don't really know anyone who doesn't enjoy music.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're probably crazy. I feel like that should be like a psycho. You know, people joke and they'd be like a psycho test, like people say, like, if you don't click your car key, lock your car like 6 times in a row, like, you're like not you're psycho if you don't do that. It's like music. If you don't listen to music, like, there's something weird about you, and I don't want to know.
Yeah. I mean, even just like casually, like, you don't even have to be an obsessive like music fan like myself.
I mean, driving, couldn't drive without music or a podcast.
Yeah. You just need something auditory to stimulate the brain.
Yeah. It helps me when I'm working. Like, it helps me focus. I'm so much more productive when I'm listening to music. And especially, like, I was listening to music as I was meal prepping for this week. I was listening to music the whole time, and it went by so fast. It was great.
It does. Well, when your brain's distracted, you're able to do a whole lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But, so anyways, getting back to tie into gaming now.
Yeah.
So in the early days when games really didn't have any music, it did change things up a lot, because obviously the earliest days you had Pong, and
Pong.
There was all you had was
beeps and boops.
Not
beep.
Even boops, more just beep.
Beep. Beep. Like a heartbeat monitor. Beep.
Yeah. And
well,
I don't know
that's kind
the
of
exact,
morbid thinking about it now.
I don't know the exact origin of when, like, what was like the first real console to have music, because I know the arcades did like very rudimentary at the time. Like Pac-Man had its very generic kind of jingles in between levels. Like Donkey Kong had basic music, but for consoles, I guess the 2600 going back did have a degree of music, but it was very basic. And it generally did not play during gameplay. It usually was sort of an interlude or a like before the game, because it took up too much memory at the time.
Yeah. That's funny to think about now, that like there were times where they had to choose between music or gameplay, like, because of memory. It's just interesting to think about. Yeah.
And the first real console, like, I think when people really think, like, music, was probably the NES. The Nintendo Entertainment System, and, like, Super Mario Brothers.
Yep.
Because it was by that point where we could at least have, like, multi-channel sound going on during gameplay. And I'm pretty sure everybody on the planet knows, like, the Super Mario Brothers theme.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever seen that? Oh, sorry.
Oh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, have you ever seen that video? It's like these two guys playing ping pong, and the ball makes like the Mario theme, like it makes like the da 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 da, like it bonks in that. You should look it up. It's pretty great.
There's a lot of like, because the Mario Brothers. So the Mario Brothers theme was composed by Koji Kondo, who was probably one of the earliest real iconic like composers of like video games.
Yep.
And like the Super Mario Brothers theme in general is like iconic. Like everybody knows like the World 1-1 theme. Everybody knows the Underground theme, like the da 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 da. And They know the water theme just because it's the water levels.
Yep.
And I mean they know it's all iconic like sounds.
Yeah.
Like to the point where they still get used like as like video game music in general.
Yeah. Or just people use them like for background sounds in like videos all the time. Like they're just so iconic that people go for them immediately.
There's a reason why the Mario theme has appeared in pretty much every Mario game there is.
Yeah.
And this was back to when most games only had one composer that do the entire soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
So Koji Kondo did all of Mario.
Yep.
He also was famous for he did Zelda.
Huh.
So the Zelda theme was a Koji Kondo piece.
Yep.
And what was interesting about video game music back in the day was it was very limited due to the hardware, because everything back then was just programmed off of a sound card built into the console, which essentially it was programs in the cartridge would send to the system's sound hardware and tell it basically what sounds to output.
Yep.
And music back then was basically, it was kind of like the programming would like manipulate sounds to create different sounds, and it had a couple channels, like they had percussion, bass, and like standard like everything else kind of channels.
Yep.
So you had to kind of make do with like what there was back in the time, and like that's why like 8-bit music is so iconic. I guess you could say.
No,
because like there's a reason why like chiptune is a thing now.
Yeah, it's just like it's
where,
a
like,
sound that's like very pleasing.
But, where like, there's like full on bands that you can find on like Spotify and stuff that just do chiptune music using like modified video game hardware.
Oh, that's so cool.
It is, and like obviously like so we're not gonna go by like obviously console generations. I think we're just gonna start going by specific franchises and composers from here on out.
Yep.
So I guess we should start with Mario, because Mario is one of probably the most iconic of all time.
Oh yeah.
And like Mario 1, even though in reality the soundtrack's only like 6 songs, I think. Everyone remembers every song like in that game, even like the 1-up like victory, like the invincibility sound effects.
Oh yeah.
And he would go on to compose. Koji Kondo would go on to compose all the NES Mario games, plus Zelda, plus Super Mario Brothers 3 on the NES, like which was like his magnum opus, I guess, on the system at the time.
Yep.
And he like had all sorts of different styles in that game. Plus, he also did Mario World, which was like one of the first games to use the Super Nintendo. And the Super Nintendo is interesting because the sound card for the system was developed by Sony, which was one of their first collaborations before their falling out.
In the PlayStation.
And, yeah. But his Mario World soundtrack is fascinating because if you actually listen to the music from Mario World, it's all basically one melody, just composed differently into like different songs. So like the Mario World soundtrack is both very limited but also very expansive.
Yep.
Like everything is based off the same melody, but it uses like a different tone and structure, which is very interesting, especially because the Super Nintendo sound card was so advanced for the time. Because it didn't use the same like kind of like sound manipulation style that the older sound cards used. Instead, it used like a sampling like system.
Yep.
So you got like these really realistic like drum and like piano and orchestral sounds. The bass was a little limited, but it had like a very distinct sound for the time. That's why Super Nintendo music is so distinct.
Yeah.
I guess you could say.
No, yeah.
So what's like a soundtrack series of like a music that you like think of with gaming?
Well, I guess mine's kind of weird, but like one of the music that I've always loved was the music in the background of Animal Crossing games. It's just like it's so peaceful. Like the background music is just so calming and peaceful, and it so fits the games. But then there's like also another special element of like the Animal Crossing series where you have the iconic character KK Slider. And throughout the series, KK Slider has had, like, he plays his guitar and he sings, and he sings like a bunch of songs, and from then you can actually like buy radios for your house, and you can basically every time he performs you can collect a song from him. So over the time you can like collect all the songs, and all of them are really wonderful. Like they put so much like charm, there's so much charm and there's so much character in it, and you can really tell that like they just had a lot of fun with the character.
Oh yeah, and one of the original composers for Animal Crossing was Kazumi Tataka, and he is most famous for his Tataka song, which is like it's that little melody that's like in pretty much every game he's ever composed. And I believe it's hidden in Animal Crossing, because I'd have to look it up again because I don't remember the melody off the top of my head. But he's worked with Nintendo for a very long time. Like, I believe he also did, like, Luigi's Mansion. He did Mario Land 2. Just a whole bunch of different Nintendo franchises. Because I believe he might work for Nintendo. I'm not sure. It's hard to say.
But yeah, I'd say the Animal Crossing is definitely ones that I loved. And
especially New Horizons.
Oh yeah, New Horizon has beautiful. I mean, New Leaf and Wild World. I mean, all of them I think have wonderful music. And they've only improved as the game and the consoles have gotten better. I do love the music in the background of New Horizons. It is.
Well, I love the intro theme, just the do 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 or whatever it is. Because I mean, you start that game up so many times, and you just get so used to that melody.
They definitely.
Or like one of my. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say they definitely try. They definitely all the music in Animal Crossing, it really fits like the vibe of the game. Where it's just very relaxing, like a nice relaxing time. But then also there's those moments like when you get stung by a bee and you're running from them, and then the music picks all up and it gets all anxious, and I feel like they really use music like to really kind of project the emotions of the character. I mean, not really emotions, but like project how you're kind of feeling during the game.
Or another great one is the whenever you have to do like like one of those like find the item on the island on this time limit, and they get that really upbeat kind of music.
Yeah. Or
that's really fun.
One of my favorites too was like Mr. Rossetti's music before they kind of like took him out of the game, but it was always like this like dar 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 dar, like this like dar 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 dar, and you were just like every time you heard that music you were like, oh no, I forgot to save, so that like it's like in your head,
Yeah.
So it's so good. I love Animal Crossing.
So now another series I wanted to bring up, because it kind of ties into why I wanted to do this episode and begin with, is the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise.
Oh yeah.
Because Sonic... So, say what you will about Sonic games, because they're not for everybody, but the one thing that the Sonic series has, like, always had going for it is its music.
Oh yeah.
Like, every Sonic... Well, almost every... We'll get into that. Almost every Sonic game imaginable has, like, phenomenal music, and it's usually, like, the high point of every game.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, like, Sonic 06. Game, horrible, but that soundtrack is awesome. Like
Sonic 06's soundtrack is too good for like that game. Like,
oh yeah,
you're better off just buying the soundtrack, because that's
and
all
not
that's
playing the game.
But going back, like even to like the first, so the Sonic series has literally always been like when it comes to like certain things, especially like music, the series has always been like, how extra can you be? Because the first two Sonic games were actually composed by Masato Nakamura, who is actually he was the bass guitarist, or still is, for a Japanese J-pop electropop band called Dreams Come True.
Yep.
And he composed the first two Sonic games soundtracks fully, which is actually one of the reasons why Sega has to pay royalties to use like the Green Hill Zone or the original Sonic theme, because those are actually owned by him directly, and the Sega has to pay him royalties to use those songs, which is kind of interesting. But he only did the first two Sonic games, because by Sonic 3, then they had moved on to. So originally, Sonic 3 was supposed to be composed by. There's a lot of debates. I believe it has been confirmed that he was involved at one point, but originally they were going to have Michael Jackson compose the soundtrack.
That's hilarious.
Well, I mean, he was on top of the world around 94, 95.
Oh yeah, no, I know. It always just makes me laugh. Sega's ties to Michael Jackson, they're just so funny to me.
But he ended up. So the original theory, well, there's still debate whether he ever was involved. I believe it has been semi-confirmed that he was involved at one point. But there's a bunch of theories why he left the project. Now, at first, the common theory was he didn't like the Genesis sound card. Because the Genesis does have a very unique sound card, to say the least. The Genesis is very distinct because it has that very twangy, sort of it's one of those sound cards that if you don't know what you're doing with it,
it could sound real weird.
Everything will sound like wet farts and twang.
I wasn't thinking wet farts, but I mean,
you gotta if you listen to some really bad Genesis music, it legit just sounds like wet farts.
Ew.
It's not good.
I just hate that phrasing.
Yeah, well, you'd understand if I can send you some sound compilations later. But,
I don't. I hate those words together.
But when you knew how to actually compose with the Genesis sound card, it could do some really awesome music. It
doesn't sound like wet farts, I guess.
Well, no, because the one thing the Genesis had over the Super Nintendo, and I will defend this till the end of time, is the Super Nintendo might have had better orchestral and soundscapes, but the Genesis had superior percussion and bass, particularly bass, because Genesis bass has a thump to it, and it's very distinct, and it's kind of one of the keys to a great Genesis soundtrack, which the Sonic series in particular was a master behind. But anyways, getting back to the whole Michael Jackson thing.
Yeah.
So the original theory was he didn't like the Genesis sound card, but at the same time he did Moonwalker on the Genesis, which is literally all his music. I believe the common reasoning behind the Michael Jackson not leaving the project was the scandals at the time. And I'm not going to get into it, but yeah. So he left the project, and one of the reasons why it's pretty much kind of confirmed that he was definitely involved at one point was there was later a re-release of Sonic 3 for the PC called the Sonic 3 Collection, which combined Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles into one package.
Yep.
And there was a number of distinct tracks that had a Michael Jackson influence in them that were replaced with other music. And there's also the Sonic 3 ending theme. Not Sonic 3 and Knuckles, just if you're playing Sonic 3 alone.
Yep.
The ending theme is literally Strangers in Moscow. It's note for note literally Strangers in Moscow. It's so hilarious. And Carnival Night is pretty much Michael Jackson's jam. So there's definitely some connections there. But after Jackson left the project, then they actually left they stopped getting outside composers, and they actually moved on to more internal, using their internal teams, and they actually used for Sonic 3 in particular, they used their in-house composers, which were it was a group of people from America and Japan.
Cool.
And they did some of the best music in the Genesis era. Howard Drawson was a big one. Also, Jun Tsunoe made his first Sonic appearance. He'll be a significant figure later on.
Yes, he is.
In Sonic music. But so what makes this interesting though is, so at this time too, music was still very much like programmed, like it was using sound cards and stuff.
Yeah.
Then we get CD technology.
Mm-hmm.
And reason I would bring this up is because there was a Sonic game called Sonic CD.
Yep.
Which was released for obviously the Sega CD, and it used CD quality audio for the first time in like a Sonic game, and it was honestly one of the first probably like distinct like vocals like in like a video game music track that I heard, because Sonic Boom in the beginning of Sonic CD has like actual singers.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about Sonic CD is it actually has 2 different soundtracks.
Oh.
Japan and Europe had their own soundtrack, and then America had its own soundtrack.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, there's odd reasoning behind it. I guess they didn't think the Japanese and European soundtrack would appeal in America.
I guess that actually sounds par for the course with just how
it's a very strongly debated topic. And so I'm on the fence because I really enjoy both soundtracks. Because the American soundtrack, the Japanese soundtrack was done by Sega's like internal sound department, and it's a really good soundtrack. It sounds like dance club music for the most part, but
yeah,
like literally the boss theme has like samples of, it's like this like rapper, and it's like the boss theme is literally like this rapper in the background going, "Work that sucker to death, come on y'all."
Oh.
Like, this is the boss music.
Yeah.
And it's really fitting, though. It's surprisingly entertaining. But the American soundtrack was instead composed by this guy named Spencer Nielsen, who had done a ton of... he had done a bunch of Sega CD soundtracks.
Yep.
And his soundtrack is a lot more atmospheric.
Oh, okay.
So it's very debatable which is better. What I do appreciate, though, is the 2011 Sonic CD, like, from the ground up remaster that they released for the mobile phones and the PlayStation 3 and 360.
Yep.
That actually gave the option to choose which soundtrack you wanted to use.
Oh, that's cool.
Which was really nice, because it basically made it so you could pick and choose.
Yeah.
I wish they had an even better one where you could pick which individual songs, but... Because there are certain songs in the American version I prefer over the Japanese version, and vice versa. But yeah, so like Sonic was always kind of like the go-to, like when it came to like music, like where I'd always like kind of like overlook, like where you kind of look beyond the actual game and just like at the music itself.
Yep.
Because Sonic also introduced us to Crush 40.
Yeah.
Starting with the 3D era, which was a rock band that featured longtime Sonic composer who would basically be the main series sound director for the start of the 3D era, Jun Sonoy on guitar, and then American singer Johnny Gioeli on vocals from the band Hardline.
Yep.
And Crush 40 would basically just be this, they'd be this recurring band that would do like all the intro themes for like Sonic games for like years. And it was like just rockin' and like Sonic music is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Not granted now, not every Sonic game is a winner in terms of music.
Oh no. There's definitely some hits and there's some misses.
Like what comes to mind is the Sonic Boom games. Ironic, they're not great games either.
Yeah, the soundtracks aren't good.
What's bizarre, though, is they were composed by Richard Jacques, who is a very prominent video game composer.
I wonder if it was kind of like the same problems with the game, where it was rushed.
Either that, he didn't have any direction to go by. Because he did music for, there's another Sonic game called Sonic and the Black Knight, which is like one of the most amazing, another average game with a way better soundtrack than it deserves. Because that game was that was like because after Sonic Shadow the Hedgehog, Jun Sonoy kind of like they kind of had Jun Sonoy do other things for a while, and they had other composers direct the games. But Sonic and the Black Knight was the first one where Jun Sonoy really kind of like came back and did a game, and for his soundtrack he like brought in all sorts of like other composers to work with. Like, he brought Howard Drossen back. He brought Tommy Tallarico, another prominent composer, and Richard Jocks did a bunch of tracks. And it's like, it's one of the best Sonic soundtracks there is.
Yeah.
There's also 5 Crush 40 songs.
Yep.
But yeah, like it's weird because Richard Jocks also did he did the Saturn version of 3D Blast, which isn't for everybody, but it's still a great soundtrack. And he also did the infamous Sonic R soundtrack.
Oh boy, is that the Supersonic Racing?
Supersonic Racing.
Yep.
And the greatest. Can you feel the sunshine? You know, the greatest racing game soundtrack ever.
Oh yeah.
It's like Europop too, which is amazing. But
yeah.
It's funny too because Richard Jocks also did probably the most infamous Sonic soundtrack of all time. The Sonic Chronicles soundtrack.
Oh.
Which is like a dump. So it's 2 things. One, the soundtrack sucks, but it's also an RPG. You know, a genre that like is dependent on great music sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, the Sonic Chronicles soundtrack is horrendous.
It was funny. I was actually I was looking up Sonic top 10 sound like out on Reddit, and there's people who say it's like 8 people like Sonic Chronicles was trash, Sonic Chronicles was trash, Sonic Chronicles. It comes up like 50 times, so I'm assuming it was very bad.
No, it was. Well, it's just so lame, especially for an RPG. But yeah, when it comes to Sonic soundtracks, before we take a break and we move on to other things, when I think best Sonic soundtracks, like I always have to split the 2D era and like the 3D era because the 3D soundtracks are so good.
Yeah.
And I love Jun Senoi, but I do actually prefer, like, my favorite Jun Senoi soundtrack is definitely Sonic and the Black Knight. Because the later soundtracks were done by Tomio Otani.
Yes.
His first soundtrack was Sonic 06, and as we know, Sonic 06 is like one of the greatest Sonic soundtracks of all time. For one of the worst Sonic games ever. But he also went on to do like Sonic Unleashed, which is another phenomenal soundtrack.
Yep.
I know he was definitely involved with Sonic Colors. I'm not sure if he was the director for that one, but he was involved with that. He's done Forces. I believe he was involved with Lost World.
Yep.
Just some amazing music.
Yep.
And it's honestly, a lot of those are better than the games themselves, in a sense.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to move on to other soundtracks. So we'll see you in a second.
Woo! Break time. Yeah.
Hey everybody, we're just going to take a quick break to give a word from our sponsor, Anchor Podcasts.
So, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way for anybody to create a podcast. Let us explain. First off, it's completely free.
I like free. And second, Anchor comes with a selection of creation tools that allows you to record and edit your podcast from the convenience of your phone or your computer. And along with that, Anchor will also help distribute your podcast to all the major podcasting platforms, notably Apple Podcast and Spotify.
And did you know? You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in a podcast, all in one place.
Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And we're back.
We're back. Woo.
So,
Who? Shmoo. Coo.
you okay?
Woo. I'm tired. It's suddenly hitting me. Anyways.
Okay. So, continuing on now, do you have any other distinct soundtracks you want to talk about?
Well, I was going to mention one soundtrack I really remember, because I remember you playing it on the Wii a lot. Like when we first got the Wii, was the Super Paper Mario soundtrack.
Okay, so the Paper Mario. So I guess we should get into Mario RPGs in general, and I guess we'll use this as a transition period for RPGs because RPG soundtracks are their own massive thing in themselves, because RPGs are very text heavy and like menu based games as it is. So you need a very strong soundtrack to really hold the player's attention. And when Mario went to RPGs, they really like needed a strong like soundtrack to really carry those games. So I guess we should go, before we get to Super Paper Mario, we should actually go back to the original Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, on the Super Nintendo.
Yep.
Because that game was actually composed by one of my favorite composers of all time, Yoko Shinomura.
Oh, nice.
And Yoko Shinomura, she would do... she did obviously the original like Super Mario RPG, but she also did all the Mario and Luigi games.
Oh, okay.
So like Bowser's Inside Story and like Superstar Saga.
Oh, nice.
And her music is always notable for it's like super like bouncy like nature to it, like high energy, like jump around kind of like sounds. Like everything is like super like high energy, but she also has done a whole bunch of other things that you wouldn't expect. Like she also did she actually did Street Fighter 2.
Oh, that's
way
funny.
back. Parasite Eve, that's a fun one.
Oh, wow.
Only the first Parasite Eve, but she did Parasite Eve, she did
Very
Legend of
different
Mana.
from Mario.
But it's clearly her if you actually listen to the music.
Oh, okay.
Her most famous soundtracks, though, that she's probably most well known for, is she does the Kingdom Hearts series.
Oh, okay.
She's done all of those from the start. But basically all of her soundtracks are like super high energy and super bouncy. And just like really fun to go down. Like I'm looking at her list now and it's like literally like it's like all the Mario and Luigi's, all the Kingdom Hearts. Just all these awesome games. She also she's contributed to a whole bunch of stuff too. But anyways, so obviously Mario RPGs like soundtracks are very important.
Yes.
But then the Paper Mario series, on the other hand, has always been the other Mario RPG, and that one's always done things very differently. And the Paper Mario soundtracks have always kind of had that weird, like, different style to them. And I remember, like, Super Paper Mario always had kind of that, like... I don't know how I'd describe it. It was very storybookish,
Okay.
I guess you could say.
Yep.
Like, how would you describe it? Because you
Like
have
the
a good
game,
memory.
like the games or the
Soundtracks,
the
particular.
soundtracks. I don't know. I just like I remember. I felt like the soundtrack, like they really like incorporated it into like the gameplay and like the moments in it. But
Yeah.
in particular, like the ones I remember is like especially like the flashback scenes with like Count Bleck, or like Tippy. I think like those moments. But then there's also like Mr. L's theme.
Mr. L.
Yeah.
Mr. L.
I think
Mr. L is like the greatest thing Nintendo ever did, and they wish they'd bring him back.
honestly they should. I just remember. I think like a lot of like the villain soundtracks were like the most interesting.
Dementio, the main villain of that game, his music is amazing.
Yeah.
Even going back to like the original Paper Mario, like that was an N64 game, and the N64 is fascinating because like the last cartridge-based console, it mostly because of the limitations of cartridges had to use like MIDIs for a lot of its soundtracks, which caused them to sound very artificial compared to like PlayStation era stuff. But Super Paper Mario in particular is like one of my favorites on the system, especially Bowser's theme. Like my favorite Bowser theme of all time is the one from Super Paper Mario by far.
Yep.
I mean, not Super Paper Mario, the original Paper Mario. Like it just sounds intimidating.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy. I just remember really enjoying the music. It always like felt fitting. Like there wasn't anyone that like was like, you know how some like it's ear grating after like the third time it like replays, but I don't think the Paper Mario track ever got. annoying for anything.
That's the key to like a great RPG soundtrack, because RPG soundtracks are very important, as I've stated before. And I guess
Pokemon.
Oh yeah, Pokemon games. I'd have to look up who the composers are, because I'm sure there's different ones, but like the original Pokemon game, that music is very iconic. Like from the upbeat like Pallet Town theme going to like the forest. Do you remember what was the name of the forest in the first game?
I have no idea.
I can't remember. I remember the theme. You know, like yeah, like all that stuff. The Lavender Town and its creepy music, like all sorts of fun stuff. The high energy battle themes.
I feel like they definitely worked hard to like have the music fit the environments you were in, because I feel like Pokemon games always kind of have that spooky area with ghosts, and they always put really fitting music for it. Or like I remember, I was playing the Diamond and Pearl remake recently, and there's the snow area, and I just feel like the music in that area it fits it so well, you know.
The Diamond and Pearl Diamond and Pearl remake soundtracks, I have to admit, playing them are really beautiful. Like, I forgot just how good Gen 4's soundtrack was.
Yeah, and honestly,
like especially like when you, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, it honestly makes me want to like just go back and listen to all the music from all the games that I played, because like there really was some great music. Like, I would love to go back to Black and White. I really need to replay that soon.
Black and White's music is so good.
I need to go back and listen, because
Gen 2 with Red's theme on top of the mountain, like probably the best like final encounter music in Pokemon history. Like, definitely. But speaking about RPGs now, I guess we should talk about probably like one of the greatest. That's okay. But you have those every episode.
Yeah, but those were like in a row, you know.
True. But I guess anyways.
I know which one you're gonna talk about.
Well, maybe not. So, RPGs talk about probably one of the most influential and like most important composers in video game history. Nobuo Uematsu, Final Fantasy.
That was my second choice of what you were going to talk about.
I think I know what you were going to, but
yeah, Persona.
We'll get to him later, but so yeah, Nobuo Uematsu is probably like the greatest like composer in video game history, because his soundtracks are like on another level, and he did the entire soundtrack for every Final Fantasy from 1 through 9, like completely by himself, like every single track. And like there's just so many iconic like battle themes, like town themes, like boss music.
Yeah.
Everything, like the Chocobo theme, the Final Fantasy Overture,
And I kind of feel like Mario, like the original Mario, you hear Final Fantasy music used in like backgrounds of videos and stuff. Like, it's just iconic.
Like, I'm trying to think, like going through them all, like Final Fantasy IV, the first one on the Super Nintendo. Like, I'd say 5 and 6 are probably better composed overall. But there's something about 4's soundtrack that is just so grand.
It's so charming.
And like it just like punches you in the face as you play it, because it's that like good. Like that music, I don't know how he got that sound out of the Super Nintendo.
Oh, this is so cool. I was searching this. I was just like Googling like the soundtrack, and the composer is actually on Spotify, so you can listen to all the music on there. I didn't realize that.
All the Final Fantasy soundtracks are on Spotify. It's amazing.
That's so cool.
But yeah, like all the songs are amazing. Like even like going to like 7, like Final Fantasy 7 has an odd soundtrack because it uses MIDIs for the most part. But the compositions are amazing. Like Aerith's theme, the Final Fantasy 7 Overture. One of my favorites in that game is the Chocobo theme, because it's like this like kind of like surf rock kind of like incarnation of it. There's also the Costa del Sol, which is like this perfect like beach music. And there's just so many like bangers in there. And then Final Fantasy 8 is like one of the probably the best Final Fantasy soundtrack ever composed for one of the most polarizing Final Fantasies, ironically.
Mm-hmm.
But like that game is just loaded with amazing music. Like it's hard to describe without like signaling out specific tracks, but in reality it's like you really need to just like listen to the music to understand it a lot of the times. And like going from like Final Fantasy now to like further on RPGs, obviously my favorite game of all time is Persona 4 Golden.
Yes.
And the Persona series,
we know.
Yeah, the Persona series has some amazing music as well. All composed by mostly by Shoji Meguro, I believe is his name.
Yep.
And it's like J-pop mixed with like Japanese hard rock mixed with like just like techno electronica, and it's like it wouldn't sound fitting at first, but playing Persona games, like I believe he's at least been the main composer from 3 onward. But I believe he was probably involved before that. But like you listen to like 3's soundtrack, and 3 had a very like kind of like moody yet upbeat soundtrack at the same time that really fit the atmosphere of Persona 3.
Yep.
And then Persona 4 had its very high energy upbeat like atmosphere. And the soundtrack like reflects that because all the songs are super like the battle theme in Golden, Time to Make History, like the
Yep.
Like that fits the vibe of Persona 4. The boss theme, the how fight yourself theme or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Even like the dungeon themes, like to this day, like I'll always have like the heaven dungeon.
Yep.
Like Naniko's dungeon. That theme is like that theme is like so fitting for that dungeon, and like the music too is like so standalone. Like you can just listen to it on its own, and you wouldn't even think it's a video game track half the time.
Oh yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yep. I know what you mean.
And then 5 took it to another level, because then 5 because 5 has the whole like heist kind of theme to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of 5's music sounds like heist music at times too, mixed with that Persona like style, and it all just kind of like rocks out as you play, and like there's so many different styles and like sounds in there. Like there's such diverse soundtracks. Like I've actually like tracked down. I have physical CDs for like all of them because they're that good. So is there another series you want to talk about?
Well, so I guess another one. I haven't played these games, but I've like listened to the soundtracks before. And it's like the game Cuphead.
Oh yeah, there's some great music in there too as well.
Yeah, because I know it was like they kind of based it off like the 1930s like animation, so, and they kind of kept the music to like all jazz and like a big band, and it just like it's so fitting with the games, like from like the little gameplay I've seen. Like I really liked that. I really liked the music from there, and then I had another one on my brain too. When I was playing Breath of the Wild had really pretty
Breath of the Wild
music.
has a great soundtrack.
It has really good music, but also like Stardew Valley has like very
Valley.
Nice
Farming simulation games have amazing music. I don't know why.
So calming. It's because like you're putting yourself into this atmosphere of like, okay, I'm on a farm, I'm calm. It's not like a very like upbeat type of game, so you kind of need like that melodic music to just like keep you calm and keep you playing, but like keep you listening, but not like annoying. So those are definitely some. Especially I think like Cuphead stands for itself because I've never even played the game, but I've heard the music before. And those are just a couple from extra from me. But you have any other you want to talk about?
Another series that has another genre of games that like has music is extremely important to the overall product is the visual novel.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously you're going to be you're reading text for most of it. And one series that has phenomenal music, like overall, is the Ace Attorney series. Particularly the original trilogy of Ace Attorney games.
Yep.
Those games, those soundtracks, I don't know what it is about them, but they fit so well for that, like the whole like court system thing. Like especially the first Ace Attorney game, like the objection theme, like that, like awesome, like badass, like the like do 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 do, like it makes you feel great about your decisions as you play. But even like the shocking moments, like the sad, tense moments, have fitting music, and that was GBA music too. And the GBA always had a very hit or miss sound card in general, because like GBA music was either really good or it was kind of meh.
Yeah.
But the Ace Attorney was like that music slaps. Like I always think of like the prosecutor from the third game, Godo, and he has that very like jazzy kind of like theme song that plays. The Steel Samurai theme that's also Phoenix's ringtone, because Maya keeps changing it to that.
Yep.
Oh, actually, Maya's theme in general, the Turnabout Sisters, is great too. Like all the themes are so distinct and like punchy, and like it's very important for a visual novel, because if you're going to be staring at the same screen for long periods of time, you need music that isn't great, like jarring. Which another, not visual novel so much, but like puzzle series is that kind of is parallel to Ace Attorney in a way, is Professor Layton.
Oh yeah.
And the Layton games have phenomenal soundtracks too that fit that like kind of like old school detective vibe that the Layton games have.
Yeah.
Especially like the first one. Like, I know those games aren't for everybody, but the music is so calming and fits the wacky narratives those games have.
Well, I was playing when I flew to Texas for work one time, for one of my old jobs. I played Professor Layton on the way there, and I get so like I used to when I first went on a plane, I was fine. But as I've I don't know, every time since I've gone on a plane, ever since I went to Japan, I get so anxious when I go on a plane now. Like I get so stressed. But when I listened to the music, it was so calming and relaxing. Like it really did de-stress me. Like, and I get so stressed on planes now. But I wanted to say, when you talked about visual novels, what came to my head was actually an indie game. An indie visual novel, which was To the Moon.
Oh yeah, yep, I've heard of that one.
And I just remember playing it, and the music just like they composed, because To the Moon is like it's just a very, I recommend it to anyone to play. It's a very emotional game. It makes you emotional.
On the Switch too.
No, yeah, it makes you emotional, and the music is just so fitting for the happy moments, for the sad moments, it's a very great soundtrack. It's on I was looking it up, it's on Spotify and like Apple Music. You can basically listen to it everywhere, but definitely recommend that. That's a very good soundtrack. It came to my mind when you said visual novel.
Speaking of another visual novel, which has a very limited soundtrack as it is, but for what it does is effective. I've been playing a lot of mods of it, but also the game itself. Doki Doki Literature Club.
Oh yeah.
The theme song, the music in Doki Doki is very. It never gets old. Like it's very like upbeat and happy, even for like as fucked up a game as Doki Doki Literature Club really is.
Oh yeah. Well, and like what they,
if you haven't played it,
and like what they kind of do with, they manipulate the music and like those scarier moments, you know.
Yeah.
It's very, that also I agree has a very good soundtrack for something where you're reading a lot of text, but it also does well to kind of like ease you in, well not ease you, but like it puts you into that like spooky environment during those spooky scenes.
Oh yeah, and even like composition wise, like even like the modding community, a lot of the mods have their own unique distinct soundtracks like too. Like there's one called Doki Doki Literature Club Blue Skies. It has its own like essentially Blue Skies is, for anyone who doesn't to break off, just explain a little bit. Blue Skies is essentially, it's Doki Doki Literature Club, but if you got rid of the horror elements, but you kept like kind of the more dramatic, like realistic themes like the depression and like stuff, but makes it like a normal visual novel. That has its own custom soundtrack, like that you can find. It's actually on Spotify if you want to listen to it. But it's so fitting because it's still in line with the actual Doki Doki soundtrack itself, but it has its own unique like twist to it that just fits like the narrative.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that. I'm trying to think another like class. Oh, the Crash Bandicoot games.
Oh yeah, especially I'd say one of my favorite Crash Bandicoot soundtracks was from Twinsanity.
Well, we'll get to Twinsanity, but we should probably talk about the first 3 games, because those were all composed by a composer named Josh Mansell, and I believe he also composed like the first 3 Jak and Daxters as well, because I believe he worked directly with Naughty Dog.
Yep.
But his soundtracks from back then were like super crazy, like upbeat, and like they had that like kind of like the do 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 do, like that sound.
Yep.
And I always remember like those were all phenomenal. Like they really kind of kept the whole kind of crazy aspect of Crash.
Yeah.
Even when Crash went multi-platform and they had to get other composers, like even like so before we get to Twinsanity, there was also there was Wrath of Cortex, and yeah, Wrath of Cortex is a very hit or miss game overall, I'd say.
Yeah.
But as a game, as for the music, they actually used Traveler's Tales 2 main sound guys from the time, and they did like a bunch of like iconic Traveler's Tales soundtracks. But going back, just like listening to like those, like they fit the atmosphere of Crash so well, and that went on to Twinsanity, which has one of the most unique soundtracks of all time, which was it was completely a cappella.
Yeah.
So like everything was composed using like like vocal sounds.
Yeah.
I think it was actually like an actual a cappella group called like Spiral Mouth.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, they were an a cappella group, so I just thought that was like, it was just so fun and so different for a video game that it always sticks with me, you know?
It fits the mood of Crash. I get that's not for everybody.
Oh yeah.
But like I always think of like the main like the da 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 like that stuff.
Yep.
It's goofy, but we also got that famous the stormtrooper gif.
Yep. That's so funny because we knew that music before we played the game because we knew it from that gif. That's
a game I really gotta play again. I have the Xbox version now, so I've been meaning to actually play that because it's just better from what I've heard.
I thought of another good soundtrack too.
Okay.
The Bayonetta series.
Who composed those? I know that composer.
Let's see.
Let me look that up real quick.
But I remember like the Bayonetta games, like they all have like don't they all have like songs? Like I know one is like "Fly Me to the Moon" is one.
So it's a lot of different composers, but I know what you're saying about the soundtracks.
Yeah. But I just, like, I've listened to the soundtracks before, like, because sometimes, like, I'll go on Spotify and I'll go on, like, SoundCloud or whatever, or even YouTube, and I'll just look up, like video game music, like, and just, like, shuffle it and see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
I've gotten some Bayonetta soundtracks, and, like, I just remember them being really good. I've never played the games, but, like, they're really good
They're worth playing. You might like them. They're on Switch.
No, I should honestly get it. I feel like I would like it.
But another actually great soundtrack too. I was just thinking about it. We were talking about Crash. We got to talk about Spyro.
Oh yeah.
And what's amazing about Spyro soundtracks is they were composed by Stuart Copeland, the drummer from The Police.
Oh, that's so cool.
And he did the soundtracks for the first 4 games, I want to say. But he also, what's funny is he was also the composer for The Amanda Show.
Oh, that's so fucking funny.
Well, the Amanda Show theme, anyways.
Yeah.
And that theme song, minus the vocals, is actually a level theme in Spyro 1.
That's hilarious.
Like, there's an entire level that's nothing but that song. It's really funny when you play the game and you're like, wait a minute.
Oh, I thought of another series. I feel like people would get mad if we didn't bring up this series. But I've never played these games. I don't know if you have, but the Kingdom Hearts series. I remember.
Well, yeah, we brought those up earlier, Yoko Shinomura.
Oh, I thought we didn't go into them though.
Well, we didn't really go into them, but.
Well, I just remember there was a certain song that was used with every anime AMV when I was.
Oh, the if you wanna whatever the vocal theme.
I gotta Google it now. I need to know because I just remember that it popped into my head in a. Alright.
Oh no, the Kingdom Hearts music is great because it's Yoko Shinomura. Everything she does is amazing. She even did a Final Fantasy later on. She did Final Fantasy 15 actually.
I gotta Google that. If you walk away, is that it? Oh,
I think that that's
Simple and Clean. That's it. Simple and Clean. That's it.
There's a whole bunch of songs.
I just remember that. I have so vivid memories just because of listening, watching AMVs when I was younger, in middle school.
Kingdom Hearts is weird because it's a series that I don't hate, but I don't have the obsession
other people
that a lot
do.
of Kingdom Hearts fans are a little odd. A little odd sometimes.
No, well, because they have some Disney adults in it. I'm just gonna say it. They got some Disney adults in there, and those people are just
fair.
Weird.
Well, it's also
those
then there's
people
also
are just weird.
There's also Final Fantasy nuts and stuff too. The Kingdom Hearts series combines a lot of those elements.
Oh yeah.
And I'm a Final Fantasy guy, but I'm not the biggest Disney fan out there. I enjoy some Disney stuff, but I'm not an obsessive like some people are.
Yeah, me either.
But Kingdom Hearts, especially story-wise, is kind of a mess, especially after the first game.
Oh yeah.
But I love the games from a gameplay perspective. They're fun games, great action RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm thinking of another. I want to get more obscure now. So even the most obscure games ever sometimes have bangers of soundtracks.
Oh yeah.
And a distinct series of games that stick out. So this is pretty much the most random thing ever, but the handheld Sims games.
Yeah, they did have really good music.
Sims Bustin' Out, Herb Sims in the City, and Sims 2 for the GBA and DS.
All had funky music, funky.
They were composed by this guy. I think his name is Ian Stalker.
Yep.
Or Stockett or something like that. But he did a ton of obscure Game Boy Advance and DS games. He did, if it was a licensed game, a lot of time he'd just do the soundtrack for work. But he did those Sims games, and those soundtracks, for what they are surprisingly complex and compelling. Mm-hmm. And granted, I mean, we've admitted it before in the podcast, we have an odd obsession with those games.
Yes.
Because they are really good games, and I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
But the first one has a very Sims 1-ish theme, because the Sims 1 itself has a really fun soundtrack, that really upbeat simulation games in general always seem to have these crazy soundtrack calming soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
And Sims Bustin' Out for GBA kind of was based off of the Sims 1 soundtrack.
Yep.
Now Herb Sims in the City, on the other hand, had a the Game Boy Advance and DS version, anyways, had a very urban styled theme.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, because it's based around the city. But then there's also the Bayou level.
Yep.
Which is straight up banjos.
Banjos.
And shit. Which is funny because then talking about the Sims, you remember the PS2 version of Herbs where it was literally just Simlish
Black Eyed Peas.
And
Well,
it worked somehow.
It did. Well, it's funny though because like that's not like the only time that they've done that. Like in I believe it was like Sims 3, no, Sims 2. They actually it was with one of the expansion packs, but it added in a lot of music and it was like
Yeah,
Katy Perry and like
Paramore was in there.
Lily Allen, Paramore, and they did Simlish covers. And I'm just like,
I know,
that's-
it's so goofy.
it's so goofy. And I also, since we're bringing up The Sims, I also need to bring up the fact that, like, in Sims, the Sims 3 music soundtracks, they sold it, like, they sold it to be, like a licensed music that, like, anyone can use. And it's in, like, almost every reality TV show uses it
Yep.
as background music now. And I just needed to bring it up because at first I thought I was crazy. And then I pointed it out to Bill, and Bill was like, oh my god, it is. And then we noticed it kept appearing. So, like, they sold the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes me laugh every time I play The Sims 3. I haven't played it in years, but it always made me laugh because I was like,
But, so another fun soundtrack, too, is, so going back to, like, Super Nintendo now, we have, the Donkey Kong Country series.
oh, yeah.
Which were all composed by, it was a combination of David Wise and, who was the other composer? Because Rareware had their own,
Koji
like...
Kondo.
No, he didn't...
Oh, never mind. He snubbed Koji Kondo. That's what it says.
Well, no, see, Koji Kondo did the original Donkey Kong, like, theme.
Mm-hmm.
But David Wise did the actual Donkey Kong Country soundtrack, which was... Donkey Kong Country is, like, amazing in terms of music and gameplay. I know they're not for everybody, but I love them in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, David Wise did... He was the composer for the first two. The third game was primarily composed by Evelyn Fisher, with David Wise assisting. For the Super Nintendo version, the GBA version had a different soundtrack composed entirely by David Wise. Those soundtracks are phenomenal because Rareware was just on top of the world. Like, because Rareware also had like Grant Coper, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He did Banjo-Kazooie.
Oh, okay.
But all their music was like super like... The Super Nintendo soundtracks were like... If you knew what you were doing with them, like they just had that like distinct sound.
Mm-hmm.
Grant Kirkhope, that's what his name is. He did Banjo-Kazooie, among other things.
Okay. Interesting.
And then who was the other rare... Oh yeah, Robin Benland, I think his name is. He did like the Conquer and stuff.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Because Rare had some great composers at the time, and all those soundtracks are just like you can like sit back and just listen to them. Like Aquatic Ambience from Donkey Kong Country 1 is still like probably one of my favorite water level themes ever, and I'm not a huge fan of water levels in general because they're just like kind of like that nautical theme never. I don't know what it is. It never really sits with me there, right? But some games just like get it down. Like Aquatic Ambience from Donkey Kong Country is one of them, and then going back to Sonic on the Genesis, Sonic 3 had Hydro City Zone with like one of the most funky like funky water level themes ever. And it's like it's so hit or miss, like whether they'll be good or not. And I'm trying to think now, like what's another phenomenal like soundtrack that needs more attention?
Well, there's plenty out there, but we would be going all night.
We would. I mean, even like modern games now have like full on productions, like the Uncharted games with like their full orchestra soundtracks. I mean, hell, the Elder Scrolls series. I don't play them particularly, but they're all composed by Jeremy Soule, who's like a phenomenal composer in his own right. Just those epic sounding like themes, like to the point where like they arguably a lot of video game soundtracks nowadays could arguably be like movie soundtracks.
Oh yeah. Well, I feel like that's just like the level of production they just put into it now. But I feel like also like they don't really have a choice. Like, they kind of have to be that up, like, that level of production, or else people will be like, why play this game? Like,
well, it kind of all started with the 7th gen era, like the PS3, 360, and Wii. Because even like Mario Galaxy soundtracks are amazing.
No, yeah,
Like,
I've seen that pop up multiple times.
Oh yeah, the full orchestras and just like, I mean, hell, even going back to like Mario Sunshine, and it's like tropical themed soundtrack.
Well, and Mario, the most recent, what was it?
Oh, Odyssey.
Odyssey, yeah.
Odyssey soundtrack's amazing
Odyssey's
too.
beautiful. Like, I love the Odyssey soundtrack.
I mean, hell, you brought it up recently, the Zelda Breath of the Wild soundtrack.
Yeah.
They've just hit that point now where it's like it's literally just it's on the same. It's always been music, but now it's like on the same level as like film scores or just general music in general.
Yeah. Well, it kind of has to be, you know, or
well, in a sense, definitely, because like. So whenever I guess kind of tying this all back together, the whole reason I wanted to do this was the argument of, are video games art? Which to me is the dumbest argument ever, because of course video games are art.
Yeah.
Video games are multiple forms of artwork composed into one product. Like, you have graphical artwork, you have the sound, the voice acting, the actual packaging like of the games has art. Like, it is a lot of even like programming in a sense is an art. Like, video games are like multiple art forms all composed into one product that you can enjoy. Most
definitely.
So it's like, of course, video game music is like one of the most important aspects of this, because it's basically you're combining all these art forms together, and it's crazy too, especially like when you take into account AAA games obviously have these phenomenal soundtracks, but going back into like roundabout indie games in general. One thing that makes an indie game what it is if it has an amazing soundtrack.
Well, especially too, like I find like a lot of indie games are very atmospheric. So you kind of need the whole environmental, like, to really put you in the environment. You need like the really good music, because even like those horror RPGs, like the witches, I remember like the witch's house, like the chase, in Eve, but like that chase scene at the end of the witch's house where you're sprinting from the house, it makes you like freaked out, like it freaks you out. It adds to the scariness of the game, and it really just makes it special.
Oh yeah, even like Yume Nikki, like all that, like, goofy music that's like super fitting at the time, or even like what's another great one? Oh, like Minecraft, the Minecraft music. It's so atmospheric and just like it sits with you. Like all this, everything is. Video game music is like a rabbit hole of like. It's amazing how deep it goes, and you're never fully fulfilled. I guess you could say in an odd roundabout way.
No, I mean, there's just so much. It's just so good. It's so good.
Yeah. Well, honestly, we could probably go on all day. Like, this was just kind of. We'll probably revisit video game music at some point. Go more in depth.
Maybe.
I'm thinking in the future maybe we'll go in depth with certain composers. Like, we'll actually take some time and do some research.
No, I think that would be interesting.
But for now, I think we'll cut it off here.
Yeah.
And we got plenty of like stuff to think about, and music. Music is such an amazing thing. I mean.
No, yeah, it
really is.
It's really powerful.
Like even the worst game ever can be saved by an amazing soundtrack.
Sonic 06.
Sonic 06. But anyways, guys, once again, thanks for joining us on the Gaming and Collecting Podcast. The Gaming and Collecting Podcast can be found on all your major podcasting platforms, particularly Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we are made on Anchor Podcasts. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter, along with Good Pods. And the episodes eventually go up on YouTube. It depends how long it takes me to get the files processed and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'll get them up eventually.
And after
But
you
anyways-
listen to this podcast, you can binge a bunch of music on Spotify as well, because there's a ton on there, which I didn't realize until doing this episode.
Aha!
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, once again, thanks for joining us, and we will see you all next time.
See you later, alligator. Bye.